Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look then at what is on the front pages as they arrive. Time to see what is making the headlines with the Daily Mail's consultant editor, Andrew Pearce, and the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire. Good to see both of you. So, to the front pages then. Let's start with The Telegraph. It has the headline, Scale Back Christmas Plans, echoing government guidance following the highest ever number of COVID cases in a day, 78,610. Similarly, the Eye proclaims, don't mix with friends unless you have to. The Express wishes its readers a very sensible Christmas. The Guardian leads on a warning to cut back on socialising as COVID cases surge to a record high. The Times with a similar front page with Professor Chris Whitty urging people to scale back on plans over Christmas or in the run-up to it. That record high figure for daily cases is also the big story for the Financial Times. Meanwhile, the Metro declares mortuary vulture to die in jail, covering the case of murderer David Fuller, who sexually abused bodies in a morgue. And The Sun leading with Katie Price, avoiding a prison sentence following her car crash early this year after admitting to being under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Well, let's get the thoughts of Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire. Christmas cheer and all that, Kevin. This is hardcore now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. This was more Scrooge than Santa from Chris Whitty, England's chief medical officer, who I think is being pretty good all the way through this COVID pandemic. But he's looking at those figures, says there are now two epidemics. There's Delta and the Omicron, 78,000 fresh cases, new record, 10,000 more than the peak last time. Nailed on after Christmas, hospitals are going to be full, cases are going to go up. So he's saying, right, this Christmas, let's not mix the way you would normally. Don't mix with friends unless you have to. Prioritise. It was a very different message from him than we had from Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, who was more positive, wasn't full of so much doom and gloom. And it's either Johnson doesn't feel it or he's terrified to say it after his MPs, 100 or so, rebelled against restrictions in England, which, to be honest, are pretty modest. When you listen to Whitty, you listen to the experts, you think, whoa, those restrictions may not be enough, but pressure will now grow if there's going to be a lockdown by stealth and people are not going out, they're not going into shops, not going into pubs, restaurants in the same way. The pressure is going to grow on the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, who is in California at the moment. The pressure is going to grow on him to actually bring back a scheme to help these businesses, which could be clobbered yet again.
Yes, in California on a business trip, I guess. But as you say, lots of questions about the money. But just in terms of us, the public, first of all, Andrew, in the absence of tougher restrictions from government, we have to do this ourselves, don't we? We kind of have to circuit break ourselves if we want to see our older relatives at Christmas.
Yeah, look, and I think it's right. We should think of this for ourselves, do it ourselves. We've been almost infantilized at times during this pandemic. People, it's the same in Scotland. It's guidance. They're not telling people they can't mix. They're advising people 3 households only over the Christmas period. It's all advice. People are being given advice, and they either follow it or they don't.
Yeah, hold on a second. We've had that, Andrew. We've had that advice from the chief medical officer. We have not had it from the government.
Well, the chief medical officer speaks for the government. I mean, I think that's fine.
But isn't that the point that people watched that press conference today, the news conference at Downing Street, that there was different messaging now from the politician who stood there and the man who's going to wait and watch and see the hospitalisations grow?
Yeah, well, look, I don't want the Prime Minister to tell me what I can and can't do. And the chief medical officer is giving his medical opinion, and you'll find another scientist who will have a completely different opinion. So people will have to work it out for themselves. And I think we're big enough and ugly enough to do that, Anna. And the fact is the Prime Minister will be feeling much more restrained about telling people what they can and can't do after the beating the government had in the Commons yesterday. Half of Tory backbenchers voted against the government. There'll be many ministers who wanted to do the same. And I think if they were even to contemplate Plan C, Plan C, which is even more social distancing, shutting pubs, shutting restaurants, I think there'd be cabinet resignations and it would be the end.
Even if cases, sorry to persist with you, but even if cases are as high as might be predicted in the coming days and weeks?
Because so far, death toll, I think yesterday was 165. It's been much higher. The death toll still isn't. It's not keeping pace with anything like the rate of transmissibility. We know it's much more transmissible, but we still don't have any evidence yet that Omicron is more lethal than the Delta variant. In fact, we suspect so far, according to the evidence, it isn't. And still, the evidence seems to be it's like a very serious cold or the flu.
That milder issue was questioned today by Chris Whitty, though, wasn't it, Kevin? I mean, he said, you know, he cautioned against anybody presuming this is milder at this point.
No, he did, and he said there could be over-interpretation of some of the data coming out of South Africa. But the point is, the new mutation might kill fewer people per 1,000, 100,000 infections than Delta. But if you've got far more infections, it's going to go up. The absolute number of people in hospital and dying will then go up. And as a public health expert, he wants to nip that in the bud and prevent it happening, because we have had times in the past when more than 1,000 people a day have been dying. At the moment, it's just under 1,000 a week, which is still a remarkable figure. That can just be considered relatively low and almost shrugged off. But it can get out of hand very, very quickly. I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I don't want to go back into another lockdown. But if all the health experts, the public health experts, are saying that is the only way to prevent mass casualties yet again, then the government would have to consider it and would need to come up with a scheme to compensate workers and businesses. There's no sign of that. But Boris Johnson it's the Keir Starmer charge that he's too weak now, and it might begin to stick because he's frightened of too many in his own party who bully him, and he may not be able to take decisions that are in the national interest as a result. And that is a problem with the Prime Minister. You need Prime Ministers to be strong and you need them to be bold. And he is weak and he's frightened.
Well, but the biggest change so far is the advice to work from home, and that is kicking in. I mean, in London, central London, it's much quieter. Much more restaurants are closing, bars are closing. We know that bookings for cinemas and theatres are down, so people are working from home. That's a major change. And I mean, Whitehall's not been back to work, frankly, since the first lockdown. So there is I think the government has moved dramatically in advising people, if you can work from home, stay at home. That's a big change, and that's going to reduce the potential for transmissibility an awful lot, I think.
Yeah, but the truth is only a minority.
To go any further than that at this stage.
The truth is only a minority of people can work from home, because many people have jobs you have to go to, whether you're in the health service, whether you're in retail, whether you're driving a cab or a bus or a lorry. And I think the Office for National Statistics last time round, I think it was only 1 in 4 people at the peak were working from home, which meant 3 in 4 were going to work. And you went to places like Middlesbrough or Burnley, I think there were 2 that were picked out. Almost everybody was still going to work because they had to, and they will be at risk. Now, if you don't want them to go to work, you will have to furlough them again. That scheme will need to be brought back. And I just wonder if the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are just capable of getting their heads around that and making some decisions that will be tough. There's no question about it, but they would be in the national interest if they're going to stop hundreds, if not thousands, of people dying.
Yeah, and I suppose the difficulty is there's a lag in cases, because by the time you've got a symptom, you get a PCR, takes another day. There's a lag in hospitalisation. So we go back to the baked-in situation in primary healthcare after Christmas, is what Chris Whitty said today. So all of this is baked in, and cases are doubling, as we now know, in less than 2 days. So you look at the FT, the figure of 78,000. That is the cases. That doesn't report all, actually, of the infections. So very swiftly, Andrew, to go back to Plan C, you know, this goes way beyond anything we've had before, which takes us to what Jenny Harries said today, that we are in a sense, the most dangerous part of the pandemic so far, despite the vaccination effort.
Yeah, but we're now, they're dramatically increasing the booster jabs, 670,000 today. That will increase again, I suspect. That was yesterday's figure. I suspect today's figure will be higher. I know it's got to get it up to 1 million, but that's going to make a big difference. And we know that the efficacy, if you've had your third jab, is up to 70%. And so far, I say it again, the evidence is that this variant doesn't make you as ill as the Delta variant. So I think we've got to rely on the booster jab. We've got to rely on it being rolled out dramatically. There are queues all over the country for it. I know Kevin thinks it was all it was diversionary politics to get away from Partygate. I'm sure there's an element of that, but actually, I think it's a great triumph what's going on with the booster jab, and it's a great triumph yet again to the NHS, the army, and the fact it's being delivered pretty successfully.
No, on Sunday evening at 8 o'clock, which is when the press conference we had today should have been held, because Johnson didn't want any questions back then. I think the message is probably right. It's just the messenger has played so many tricks, and you could see he was talking about a tidal wave on Sunday, and then he comes along today and he's basically shrugging his shoulders a bit. And he's not really offering anything else. While Chris Whitty next to him, as Sam Coates picked out, it was like two different press conferences, one given by Whitty and one given by Boris Johnson.
Yeah, well, we will talk more, no doubt. There's so much to discuss on this. And certainly Chris Whitty did caution against this idea of mildness, because if you want to rely on people's behaviour now to control the surge, then that's one big area that might dictate people's behaviour, I suppose. That's one element. Anyway, lots more to come, including, is Boris Johnson losing support among influential Tory backbenchers, and is his political future in danger? All of that to come. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire. Off the back of Omicron, obviously, the measures that were brought in, that bruising encounter in Parliament and that vote, over 100 Tory MPs. The Telegraph looking into the implications of that now, Andrew. Suggestion that people can email in letters of no confidence during the holidays. Goodness me.
Now that will be really not welcomed in Downing Street at all, because the House of Commons now goes into recess tomorrow. And we get the by-election result. We get the by-election result, which could have a bearing on letters of confidence. But what Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, has said is, if MPs want to email their letters in during the recess, that's fine, as long as there's a follow-up phone call and he can verify it's genuine. Now, in the past, it's always been the letter actually had to be handed over. So that's quite a dramatic change. And that will be a cause for concern in number 10, because people are, over the Christmas period, who knows what political difficulties may accelerate for the Prime Minister. Those letters could start coming out. I suspect there are already some letters. I don't know that, but I suspect there's a few, probably from the usual suspects. But the Telegraph has also crunched those numbers of the 100 MPs who didn't vote for the Prime Minister yesterday, and it includes the 6 officers of the 1922 committee, the Treasurer, the Secretary, the Chairman, all 6. Now, these are really influential people in the backbenches, and none of them supported the Prime Minister yesterday. Now, they would say that's not on if you like, on an ideological or a party political issue. It was all to do with Plan B, but it's pretty worrying if you're a Boris Johnson supporter.
Yeah, and do you mind if I move on, Kevin, to do the real-world issues also facing the government, which is inflation, families feeling the pinch, inflation at a 10-year high. That's also a big deal too.
This is why I don't think it's going to get any better for the Prime Minister. Indeed, it will get worse, because inflation at 5.1 on CPI, 7.1 on RPI, which is used to calculate, for instance, rail fare increases, student loan fees. This is really going to squeeze people's incomes, because wages are not growing at this rate, so real wages are falling. And then in April, we're going to have national insurance going at 1.25%. So it's going to make it worse in terms of people's family budgets. And I think people will kick back and rebel, and all the issues, all the problems with the Prime Minister will just get worse, because people will feel they're being treated badly.
Kevin and Andrew, so much to talk about at the moment, would you believe? Just over a week to Christmas. Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.